Today, we're getting into a story that's all about what happens when food, faith, and human rights collide in a really explosive way in India.
And I want to start with a quote. It's from a Dalit scholar named Rohith Vemula, and he wrote these words just weeks before he died by suicide. See, he'd just been suspended for organizing a beef festival. And his message, wow, it just captures the incredibly high stakes here, both personal and political.
So that brings us to the big question we're tackling. How on earth did a piece of meat become this powerful symbol of both oppression and liberation in the world's largest democracy? Let's dig in.
All right, first up, a festival of protest. Now, you might think a story like this would start way back in ancient history, but no, it actually kicks off on modern university campuses.
Picture this, it's 2012, and students at Osmania University in Hyderabad do something totally radical. They organize a public beef festival. And look, this was not just a cookout, it was a massive political statement. They were taking a food that had been used to stigmatize them for centuries and turning it on its head, making it a symbol of pride, a symbol of their rights.
But as you can probably guess, this bold move was met with some serious, violent pushback. Right-wing student groups actually stormed these festivals, attacking the people there. And this wasn't a one-off thing. Campuses all over India basically became battlegrounds over this very issue. So why such a violent reaction? I mean, it's just food, right? Well, to get it, we have to rewind. We've got to look at the deep, deep historical roots connecting beef to the caste system in India.
Okay, so at the absolute core of this is the idea of untouchability. This was the historical practice of basically casting out entire communities who we now know as Dalits, and labeling them as impure. And the key to understanding how this all started, you guessed it, it comes back to beef. There's this really incredible theory from B.R. Ambedkar, who is one of the main architects of India's constitution. He basically laid it out like this. Step 1, way back when, pretty much everyone in India ate beef, including the Brahmin, or priestly caste. Step 2, then, Brahmanism started competing with Buddhism for followers, so it adopted this idea of nonviolence and, in the process, made the cow sacred. And step 3? Well, the poorest communities, they couldn't just give up a vital food source. They kept eating beef, often from cattle that had already died. And for that, they were ostracized, pushed to the margins, and eventually branded as untouchable.
And that's the absolute crux of the argument. The caste system wasn't just some abstract social theory. It was built on something very real, very material, a food hierarchy. And right at the bottom of that hierarchy was beef. So you have the centuries-old tension simmering, and then, boom, it all explodes onto the national stage when it's time to write India's constitution. And you had two titans with completely opposite views. In one corner, Mahatma Gandhi. He saw cow protection as the absolute heart of Hinduism, a moral duty. He even urged untouchables to just give up beef voluntarily. But in the other corner was Ambedkar. He was like, hold on a second. Fundamental rights are for humans, not animals. He argued there was no way a ban on cow slaughter should be in the Constitution. So what happened? Well, they compromised. Kinda. They added Article 48 to the Constitution. It suggests states should restrict cow slaughter. But here's the clever part. They framed it as being for agricultural reasons, not religious ones. And crucially, it's what's called a directive principle. Think of it as a strong suggestion, a guideline, not a hard and fast law you can be sued over. And that little bit of ambiguity? It basically left the door wide open for all the conflict we see today.
Which brings us to now, and some pretty mind-blowing contradictions.
You know, we often hear this narrative about India being a vegetarian country, right? But is that really the whole story?
Not even close. Get this. According to government studies, up to 70% of Indians are non-vegetarian. But wait, the irony gets even better. For all the intense political drama around beef inside the country, India is actually a massive player on the global beef market. How massive? How about the third largest beef exporter in the entire world? But, and this is a huge but, there's a catch. The beef they're exporting, it's almost all buffalo meat. And this is where our source material points to a major double standard. See, the cow is sacred, holy, but the buffalo, which is just as, if not more, economically important for things like milk and meat. Nope, no sacred status for the buffalo. The source we're looking at calls this a casteist double standard, treating one animal as pure and the other as just useful.
Okay, so this all leads to our final point, how this whole debate about food
isn't really about food at all. It's about fundamental human rights.
And this cultural pushback has created some amazing art, like poetry and music. There's this one line from something called the Beef Anthem that just hits so hard. It lists all these great thinkers, Buddha, Socrates, Plato, Jesus, Marx, and says they were all beef eaters. It flips the script completely, claiming beef isn't shameful, it's the secret of life.
This whole movement has a name, Dalitization, and it's so much bigger than just food. It's a call for the democratization of dignity. It's about tearing down those old false walls that say one person's culture is sacred while another's is profane. It's about demanding equality across the board. So at the end of the day, when you see activists organizing one of these beef festivals, it's not just a meal. It's a powerful statement. They're standing up and saying, we are human. Our food is food. Our culture is valid. It's as simple and as profound as that.
And that leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on, doesn't it? If democracy's big promise is equality, then where does that equality have to start? Maybe, just maybe, it begins with something as basic as the food on our plate and the fundamental right to eat what we choose, freely and without